The beginning of the end. The prophetic trigger of God's timeline. For hundreds of years, it has been common knowledge within the church that mankind's lifespan upon this earth would be 6,000 years. This was gleaned from Exodus 29:10, which says, 6 days shalt thou labor, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. Like many things in the scriptures, it had a deeper meaning beyond what was being conveyed about their calendar, which was later revealed in 2 Peter 3:8, but, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. In 1650, using these scriptures, Archbishop Jacob Ussher of Armagh in Ireland attempted to calculate when the creation took place by using chronological information from the Bible and counting backward from the date of the birth of Christ. At that time, it was believed that Christ was born in 4 BC. Some calculations had indicated that it may have been as late as 1 BC or as early as 6 BC. However, recent evidence have determined it to be 3 BC, so Ussher theorized that the creation took place in 4004 BC, and the passing of 4 days, 2,000 years before the law, and 2,000 years after the law, took us to Christ's birth in 4 BC, so 2 more days would end the 6 days at 1996. The Sabbath, or the seventh day, is the millennium, or the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ upon the earth, which is referred to in the 20th chapter of Revelation. An apocryphal book known as the Epistle of Barnabas, which early church leaders such as Origen and Jerome believed had been written by the first recruit of the Apostle Paul, Barnabas, said, "And God made in 6 days the works of his hands, and he finished them on the seventh day, and rested on the seventh day and sanctified it." Consider, my children, what that signifies. He finished them in 6 days. The meaning of it is this, that in 6,000 years the Lord God will bring all things to an end. For with him, one day is 1,000 years, as himself testifieth, saying, Behold, this day shall be as 1,000 years. Therefore, children, in 6 days, that is, in 6,000 years, shall all things be accomplished. And what is it that he saith? And he rested the seventh day, he meaneth this, that when his Son shall come, and abolish the season of the wicked one, and judge the ungodly, and shall change the sun and the moon, and the stars, then he shall gloriously rest in that seventh day. Irenaeus, an early church leader, while writing in 150 AD about the book of Genesis in his book Against Heresy said, "This is an account of the things formerly created, as also it is a prophecy of what is to come. For the day of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and in 6 days created things were completed. It is evident, therefore, that they will come to an end at the 6,000 years." Around 300 AD, in the writings of Christian scholar Lactantius, he said, "Because all the works of God were finished in 6 days, it is necessary that the world should remain in this state 6 ages, that is 6,000 years. Because having finished the works he rested on the seventh day and blessed it. It is necessary that at the end of the 6,000th year all the wickedness should be abolished out of the earth and justice should reign 1,000 years." Other writers during the early Christian era also reflected this premise. Some researchers have sought to adjust the calculations of this theory. The Jewish calendar conformed to the solar year, which contained 360 days, or 12 months of 30 days. In 1583, the Gregorian calendar was adopted, which added an extra 5.25 days to that year. If you add 2,160,000 days, 6,000 years 360 days, to 2,173.50 days, 414 years of 5.25 days, you get 2,162,173.50 days, which divided by the Jewish year of 360 days, would make the end of the 6th day, the year 2002. When you deduct from that figure, the 7-year period which is commonly referred to as the tribulation period, that leaves us with the year of 1995 as the culmination of the efforts to establish a new world order. There is another theory, which has to do with the amount of time that the Jewish race would be dispersed across the earth. The Jews were in bondage in Egypt for 430 years and later for 70 years in Babylon. These dates were foretold. The purpose of the prophecy which is given in Ezekiel 4:1-8 was to show how long the Jews would be scattered as a people. Other scriptures deal with the extent of the dispersal. Deut. 28:25, Deut. 28:64, Jer. 24:9, and Amos 9:9. Adding the 390 and 40 years, gives you 430 years. Leviticus 26:18 says, "And if ye will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins." From 430, subtract the 70 years they were punished in Babylon, and what God was telling Moses, was that the Jewish people would be dispersed for 2,520 years, 360 years 10:7. Now here is where it gets a little tricky. Nebuchadnezzar's first return of his Jewish captives was in 536 BC, and the final return was in 516 BC. Again, Using the adjustment for the two calendars, and using the earliest date of 536 BC, we get these calculations: 907,200 days, 2,520 years 10,360 days, plus 2,110.50 days, 402 years 10,5.25 days, is 909,310.50 days divided by 360 days of the Jewish calendar is 2,525.86 years, or the year 1990. But then, the latter date of 516 BC, would give us the year 2010. The Bible also says that the events of the end times would not take place until all of the Jews return to their homeland, and this return is referred to in Isa 5:26, Isa 11:11-12, Isa 43:5-6, Jer 16:15, Jer 30-3, Ez 34:11-13, Ez 36:24, and Sesh 10-8. This return of God's chosen people only refers to pure, full-blooded Jews, Genesis 6:1-4, Ezra 10:2-18, Nay 13:27, Jude 1:7. In 1800, Palestine had a population of 150 Jews, 1,827 1,500 Jews, 1,858,000, 1,910 41,000, 1,914 100,000, 1,930 170,000, 1,935 300,000, 1,939 450,000, 1,948 650,000, 1,953 1,300,000, 1,962 2 million, and 1,972 500,000. Now there are nearly 5 million Jews in Israel which have been gathered up from over 102 different nations. A gentleman by the name of Joe Marler had proposed a theory based on Daniel 9:25-26 which says, "Know therefore and understand, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. And quote. The Hebrew word for week is shabula, which means 7, indicating that a week is actually 7 weeks of years, or 49 years, which is known as the Jubilee cycle, Lev 25-8. The 62 weeks began when the city of Jerusalem, and its temple, which was destroyed in 586 BC, was rebuilt. 3 such decrees were given. The first came during the first year of the reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, 536 to 527 BC, who ruled for 9 years, after which his son Cambyses, 527 to 520 BC, took over, and all the work on the temple was stopped for 7 years. The second decree was made by Darius I, in the second year of his 35-year reign, 520 to 485 BC. Construction resumed on the temple in 520 under Zerubbabel, the Persian governor, and was completed between 516 to 514 BC. Then Xerxes reigned 21 years, 485 to 464 BC. Artaxerxes ruled 40 years, 464 to 424 BC, and during his 7th year, in 457 BC, he decreed that Jerusalem be restored. Nehemiah, the cupbearer to Artaxerxes, was sent to Jerusalem in 444 BC to complete the work on the walls of the city to fortify it. Thus the period of 62 weeks represents 434 years, which added to 444 BC, indicates the date of 10 BC, which is close to the time of the birth of Christ. Marler's research somehow led him to the period of 440 to 438 BC, and adding 434 years to 438 BC led to 4 BC, which is closer to the actual date of the birth of Jesus. Marler believes that the other 7 weeks or 49 years apply to the second coming of Jesus, rather than using the date of May 14, 1948, when Israel officially became an independent country. He used the date of November 29, 1947, when the United Nations voted 33-13 to approve a Jewish homeland. Adding 49 years indicated a date of November 29, 1996, as the end of man's rule on this earth. By counting back 3.5 years, he theorized that the period known as the tribulation would begin May 29, 1993. The irony here is a story that was reported on the news on May 19, 1993. Big Ben, the renowned tower clock famous for its accuracy, which was installed in 1859 at the eastern end of the Houses of Parliament in London, had mysteriously stopped running. Was the most recognized timepiece in the world stopped through divine means to signal the beginning of the end? No. And another date has come and gone. Marler's research somehow led him to the period of 440 to 438 BC, and adding 434 years to 438 BC led to 4 BC, which is closer to the actual date of the birth of Jesus. Marler believes that the other 7 weeks or 49 years apply to the second coming of Jesus. Rather than using the date of May 14, 1948, when Israel officially became an independent country, he used the date of November 29, 1947, when the United Nations voted 33-13 to approve a Jewish homeland. Adding 49 years indicated a date of November 29, 1996, as the end of man's rule on this earth. By counting back 3.5 years, he theorized that the period known as the tribulation would begin May 29, 1993. The irony here is a story that was reported on the news on May 19, 1993. Big Ben, the renowned tower clock famous for its accuracy, which was installed in 1859 at the eastern end of the Houses of Parliament in London, had mysteriously stopped running. Was the most recognized timepiece in the world stopped through divine means to signal the beginning of the end? No. And another date has come and gone. There are also those researchers who have chosen to totally base all of their calculations on the premise of 360 days indicating a biblical year. For instance, in Hosea 6:1-2 it says, "Come, and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn, and he will heal us, he hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us, in the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight." From the initiation of Christ's ministry, in the fall of 28 AD, and adding 2 days, 2 years 360 days, would give us 720,000 days, which adjusted to our calendar by dividing into that 365.25 results in 1971.25 years, which added to 28.75, takes us to the year 2000. Another one has to do with the cleansing of the temple. In 168 BC, the Syrian king Antiochus IV Epiphanes attacked Israel, and sacrificed a pig to Zeus on the temple altar, an event that is referred to as the abomination of desolation. The period till cleansing, according to Daniel 8:14, was 2,300 days, which some scholars feel refers to 2,300 morning and evening rituals, or 1,150 days, 3 years, 2 months and 10 days, which seemingly points to the ritual cleansing performed by Judas Maccabeus 3 years later, after the success of the Hasmonean revolt. However, according to the apocryphal book of the Maccabees, the temple was cleansed in 1,080 days. To make matters worse, while the King James Version states 2,300 days for this period, the Greek Septuagint, which was used during the time of Christ, says 2,400 days. In his 1754 book Dissertations on the Prophecies, Bishop Thomas Newton wrote about the existence of a third manuscript of the Book of Daniel, which was mentioned in a commentary of Jerome, the early church leader. This manuscript gives the figure of 2,200 days. Since this figure cannot be applied literally to the events of that time, it is believed that the figure should be considered as years. This assumption is based upon Ezekiel 4:6, which says, "I have appointed thee each day for a year," and Numbers 14:31, which talks of each day for a year. If the figure of 2,200 days is used, the following calculation is then applied. 2,200 years 360 days equals 792,000 days, which adjusted for our calendar year of 365.25, results in 2,168 years. When this figure is added to 168 BC, it leads us to the year 2000. Another theory deals with the times of the Gentiles. This phrase stems from a statement by Jesus in Luke 21:24, "And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." This refers to a period which began in 606 BC when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem. In Daniel 4:23, according to Nebuchadnezzar's vision, who is represented by a tree, as men sometimes were, Psalms 1:3, Psalms 37:35, easy, 31:3, 7 times were to pass over him. Revelation 11:2-3, 42 months x 30 equals 1,260 days, Revelation 12:6, 1,203 score days or 1,260 days, Revelation 12:14, a time, and times, and half a time or 360 plus 720 plus 180 equals 1,260 days, indicates that a time is 360 days, which means that 7 times would be 2,520 days or years, on top of referring to the 7 years God struck him down with a period of insanity to show his power. The calculation would go like this: 2,520 years 360 days equals 907,200 days, which adjusted to our calendar year of 365.25 days, results in 2,483.78 years. When this figure is added to 606 BC, it leads us to the year 1878, which is believed to be the end of the times of the Gentiles. Now comes an interesting proposal. When Jesus spoke of the way things were in the days of Noah, when God gave mankind an additional 120 years, Genesis 6:3, to repent, before he sent the flood, This period has been added to the year 1878, of course in the adjusted form of 118.28 of our calendar years, which indicates the year of 1997 as the end of the times of the Gentiles and the beginning of the judgment period known as the tribulation, which when you add this 3.5 years, and leads us to the year 2000. Let me throw one more at you, which came to me from an email, and the website of Torstein Longeseder from Norway, who made a very detailed mathematical calculation to determine the number of years between Adam and Jesus, and believes that the period of 6,000 years will conclude in 2028. All of these calculations can be somewhat correlated to the six-day theory, in that it indicates a time frame for events within this 6,000-year period. Jesus was very specific when he spoke about the signs of his return, and he exhorted his disciples to watch and pray. Because of the symbolism, type and anti-types, and dual prophecies used in the Bible, was there something that would signal the end of time as we got closer to the end of the 6 days or 6,000 years? In Luke 21:25, Jesus talked about the signs, upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity ... and quod. There was a period in our history when a sequence of events occurred which seemed to set the stage for the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Let's look at the events which happened during the 3-year period of 1945 to 1948. 1. On June 26, 1945, at a San Francisco conference, 50 nations met to adopt the United Nations Charter. The UN General Assembly held their first meeting in London on January 10, 1946. 2. A UFO was reported to have crashed in Roswell, New Mexico on July 4, 1947. 3. On November 29, 1947, the UN voted to approve a Jewish homeland, and on May 14, 1948, Israel became a nation. 4. It has been long accepted that the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, but according to Randall Price in his book Secrets of the Dead Sea Scrolls, he found out that they may have actually been discovered as early as 1936. However, 1947 was time when their existence was revealed. 5. The World Council of Churches was established on August 23, 1948. Just as we are able to interpret prophecy and determine the signs of the time, so is Satan. He knew the time that Israel would prophetically be resurrected as a nation, and he had to make sure his plans would be in place, so, when the time came, he would be able to deceive the world into accepting the Antichrist as the Messiah. Let's look at the events surrounding Israel becoming a nation. The establishment of the United Nations would herald the move toward one world government. As discussed earlier, recent expose has shown that there was a UFO crash at Roswell, and among the technology gleaned from it was integrated circuit chips, fiber optics, and lasers. The treasure of ancient documents found at Qumran has yielded copies of nearly every Old Testament book. However, it has also turned up documents from a Jewish sect known as the Essenes. As these Dead Sea Scrolls were translated in secret, the scholars behind them began to use them to undermine the divinity Jesus, by saying that the Essenes were the true originators of what became known as Christianity. And the World Council of Churches would begin the move toward ecumenicalism that is seeking to bring all the world's religions together into one unified body. Now let's put these events in perspective with Bible prophecy. Jesus said in Matthew 24:34, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass, till all these things be fulfilled." And quod. Jesus was speaking to his disciples concerning the last days, and had just told them about the parable of the fig tree. Some Bible scholars have interpreted Ezekiel 36:8 to mean that the fig tree represented the nation of Israel. So it is believed that Jesus was referring to the generation that would be alive when Israel became a nation on May 14, 1948. Job 42:16 refers to a generation as being 35 years, while Webster's dictionary indicates that it is 40 years. The figure of 40 years is echoed in Hebrews 3:9-10, which says, "When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation." And quod. Adding 40 years to 1948 would give us the year 1988. But let me add another wrinkle to this theory. It is no secret that Bible prophecy, and the understanding of it, revolves around Israel. Israel is the only nation that is referred to in the masculine gender. According to Jewish custom, a male is labeled under the following age categories: child, 1 to 12, young man, 13 to 19, warrior, 20 to 29, and mature man, 30 to 50, who is able to officiate in the temple. The age of 50 is the age of retirement and jubilee. So if you interpret this as being symbolic and add 50 years to 1948, you get the year 1998, which is more closely aligned with the other calculations. I think you'll agree that this sequence of events was unprecedented, and that it was no coincidence that these major events happened in such a short period of time. This is why I believe that collectively, they represent the prophetic trigger that has set into motion the time which has come to be known as the last days. And quod. These events began the toppling of the prophetic dominoes that will eventually lead to the fulfillment of all things, and the culmination of the events foretold in the books of Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelation. Though Jesus said in Matthew 24:36, "Of that day and hour knoweth no man," the prophetic outline he gave indicated the warning signs we are to look for. When it is cloudy, it is a sign that it is going to rain. Much the same, Jesus told his disciples what to look for, and in Matt 24:33 explained that when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near. I for one will not try to calculate a date. I believe that it's okay to come up with a time frame, but in the context that we also consider the signs that Jesus told us to look for. We have been seeing the signs. Without a doubt the end is near. Make sure that your heart is right with God. Watch, and pray.